pack your shit and get out. Your sister and her baby need the room now." My mother shoved the black trash bag into my chest on Christmas morning while my father stood behind her, arms crossed. My sister watched from the staircase holding her 2-year-old son and smiled. "Good luck starting over, loser. Nobody wants a 27-year-old burden who can't even pay her own loans." I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just took the torn envelope my grandfather had given me 3 weeks earlier. The one with the old brass key inside. I drove 80 miles west to the address written on the back. When the iron gate opened, the security guard stood at attention and said, "We've been expecting you, Ms. Morton." My family thought they had finally gotten rid of me. They had no idea they had just handed me the receipts that would destroy them. My name is Sienna Morton. I'm 27 years old. Before I tell you what my grandfather actually left me, hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I read every single comment. Let me take you back 6 hours, to the morning that started like every Christmas I had survived in that house. I woke up at 7:15 in the bedroom I had grown up in. The same twin bed. The same crooked nightstand my father had refused to fix for 20 years. The same window that looked out at the maple tree my mother kept threatening to cut down. There was cinnamon in the air. There was Christmas music playing softly downstairs. There was the kind of silence you mistake for peace if you have not learned to listen for what is missing. I had moved back into that bedroom in October, after my Brookline studio sold out from under me. My landlord had given me 28 days. My next apartment lease did not start until February. My mother had offered the spare room with a sigh that already felt like a bill. I came downstairs in my work scrubs because I had not yet unpacked the rest of my clothes. I had not unpacked anything in 2 months. Part of me had known. Logan was already awake, sitting on the carpet in front of the tree, holding the brown teddy bear that had once been mine. Vanessa was upstairs taking a shower. My mother was arranging stockings. My father was in the kitchen pretending to fix the toaster. Holden was on his phone. "There's coffee in the kitchen, honey," my mother said. She did not look up. I poured a cup. I sat down. I watched Logan unwrap the set of wooden blocks I had bought him with the last $46 in my checking account. My mother sat across from me with a stack of paper in her lap. She had stapled it. The stapling is the detail I think about most. "Your father and I have talked about this," she said. My father sat down beside her. He folded his hands. He did not look at me. "Vanessa needs the room. Logan needs stability. You're 27. You'll figure it out." My mother nodded as if she were reading from the stapled pages, but she did not look down at them. The pages were a prop. "It's nothing personal, Sienna." That was when I noticed the trash bag in the corner of the garage doorway. Black. Double-bagged. The handles tied. The shape of folded clothes pressed against the plastic. The shape of my entire life. She had packed it the night before. The Christmas tree lights blinked on and off. I asked for one thing. "Can I take Grandpa's Bible? The one he gave me when I was 14? "Mom keeps that," my mother said. Vanessa came down the stairs holding Logan in her arms. She watched my mother shove the bag into my chest. She smiled. I have already told you what she said. I carried the bag out the front door in my work coat. Holden stood at the living room window. He waved. He was smiling too. I put the bag on the back seat of my Honda Civic. I sat behind the wheel. I did not start the car. I opened the glove compartment to find a paper towel for my hands, and I touched the torn envelope my grandfather had pressed into my hand at our last visit. The one I had carried home from the will reading 3 weeks earlier. The one Holden had laughed at in the parking lot. The one my mother had told me to throw away. I pulled it out. The brass key fell into my palm. I turned the envelope over. In pencil, in my grandfather's slanted handwriting, was an address. Ashbury Vault and Trust, 1208 Belmont Avenue, Springfield, Massachusetts. Box 312. I had read it before. I had not understood it. Holden had called it a storage unit full of junk. I was about to find out he was wrong about the only joke that had ever mattered. To tell you why I drove west instead of east, I have to tell you about my grandfather. His name was Theodore Beaumont. Everyone called him Theo. He had owned 3 pharmacies in the Pioneer Valley before he sold them in 2015. Beaumont Pharmacy, East Hampton. Beaumont Pharmacy, Northampton. Beaumont Pharmacy, Holyoke. He had started the first one in 1971 with $7,000 and a chemistry degree he had paid for by working nights at a paper mill. He counted pills the way some men count blessings. The first memory I have of him is the cash register at the East Hampton store. I was 9 years old. He was 61. I sat on the stool behind the counter watching him ring up a prescription for an elderly woman named Mrs. Pemberton. He gave her change. She walked to the door, then turned around and came back. She handed him $2. "You gave me too much, Theo." He smiled. He took the $2. He looked at me. "That's why we count twice, kiddo. You count twice, you sleep once." I did not understand what he meant until I was 27 years old, sitting in a private vault in Springfield, looking at a column of numbers he had counted twice every month for almost a decade. But that morning in the pharmacy, he just put the $2 in the register, wiped his hands on the white apron with the blue ink stain on the left shoulder, and slid me a roll of butterscotch from the candy jar. My grandfather came to every recital I had in middle school. My mother came to none of them. My father came to one. Grandpa sat in the 3rd row of the auditorium with a small bouquet of yellow tulips on his lap, every single time. After my 8th grade recital, the year I played a Bach piece I was too small for, he put his hand on my shoulder in the parking lot and said something I did not understand at 13. "You're the one who watches, Sienna. Watchers always know more than they say. Don't lose that." He tucked a craft envelope into the inside pocket of his coat as he said it. I did not ask him what was inside. I was 13. He bought me a chocolate milkshake at Friendly's and drove me home. In the summer before my senior year of high school, I got my acceptance letter from Boston College. The BSN program. 4 years. Real money. The letter sat on the kitchen table for 3 days because nobody at home would talk about how I was going to pay for it. On the 4th day, my mother said, "Honey, we can't help with this. You'll have to look at community college. Grandpa is on a fixed income now." I went to Grandpa's house that weekend. I sat on the front porch with him and a glass of unsweetened iced tea. He listened to me cry without interrupting. When I finished, he put his palm flat on the porch railing. He had a way of touching wood when he was deciding something. "Don't worry about Boston, sweetheart. We'll find a way. Just keep going." The next month, August of 2016, he drove to a lawyer in Springfield and set up a custodial account for my education with my mother as the listed custodian. I would not learn about the account for another 9 years. I would not learn what happened to most of the money inside it until I had already been a registered nurse for 4.5 years and was paying $1,100 a month against student loans that should never have existed. I want you to remember one thing about my grandfather. He was not the kind of man who told you that he loved you. He was the kind of man who showed up. With tulips, with milkshakes, with the right number of pills, with a porch railing and a sentence that turned out to be a promise. The last time I saw him alive was on the 2nd of November, a week before he died. He was in his bed at home in East Hampton. Hospice had been by that morning. He had stopped eating 2 days earlier. He was clear in the head and tired everywhere else. I sat on the edge of his bed. He took my hand. "Sienna, I want to give you something. Open the top drawer." The top drawer of his bedside table had a single envelope in it, craft paper, torn at the upper corner. Inside was a brass key. He pressed it into my palm and folded my fingers around it. "Don't lose this. Don't open it until they show you who they are. They will. Sooner than you think. I asked him who he meant. He just shook his head and squeezed my hand. He held it longer than he had ever held it before. They will. Wait. He died 7 days later in the early afternoon on the 9th of November. At his funeral, my mother told 2 of my cousins that I had barely visited him during his last months. She told my aunt I had been too busy with work to make time. She wiped a tear that nobody had seen come down. The hospice record said I had been there 19 times in the last 18 weeks, 3 times a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday afternoons, after every 12-hour shift at Brigham and Women's. She never asked them. She did not have to. She already knew the answer. My grandfather had quietly funded my college from the moment I left for orientation. I did not know that. What I knew was this. I worked 3 nights a week at a long-term care facility in Chestnut Hill from the time I was 19. I picked up extra shifts every break. I lived with 3 roommates in a basement apartment in Brighton that smelled like radiator dust. I took out federal Stafford loans, the maximum amount allowed by law. I took private loans with SoFi when those ran out. Every semester, I called my mother to ask if Grandpa could help. The answer was always the same. Honey, he just can't right now. He's tired. We can't keep asking him. I believed her. In the same year, I signed my biggest private loan, $24,000 at 9.4% interest junior year. My sister got an Audi Q3 for her 17th birthday. Pearl white, bow on the hood. Vanessa posted a photo on Instagram in the driver's seat with the caption, "Thank you, Mom and Dad, you're the best," and 3 little heart emojis. I closed the app. I went back to my shift. I told myself families are not fair, and that was the end of it. I graduated from Boston College in May of 2021 with my BSN and $92,000 in student loans. My mother and father came to my graduation. My grandfather came too, although he was already starting to lose weight. He stood in the back of the photo line and slipped me an envelope before he left. There was a card inside. It said, "I am so proud of you. I have always been proud of you. You count twice. You sleep once. Theo." There was no money in the envelope. I noticed. He saw me notice. He did not explain. A year later, September of 2022, my sister married Cameron Pruitt at Wentworth by the Sea on the New Hampshire coast. $80,000 for the reception, 180 guests, a Vera Wang dress that my mother told 3 different cousins they had been saving for since Vanessa was 16. I was placed at table 14 with second cousins I had not seen since I was a child. My grandfather was placed at the head table. He did not eat. When the dancing started, he found me near the bar. He held a champagne flute he had not touched. He leaned close enough to be heard over the band. "They have been saving from the wrong jar, kiddo. Wait." That was the word he used most often in the last 3 years of his life. Wait. I did not know what to wait for. I waited anyway. He died 14 months later. 3 weeks before the Christmas you already know about, my family gathered in a probate lawyer's office in Northampton for the reading of his will. The lawyer's name was Marjorie Hannigan. She was 66 years old, wore a navy cardigan over a pressed white shirt, and read the document as if she had read it many times before with my grandfather present. My 4 cousins each received $25,000. My 2 aunts received small properties in Westfield, worth about $180,000 each. Holden received our grandfather's 1998 Lincoln Continental. My mother received the residue of the probate estate, about $320,000 after taxes and fees. Vanessa received the lake house in Otis, 3 bedrooms, dock, screened porch, about $720,000 on the open market. My father was not named. He had married into the family, and my grandfather had never pretended otherwise. Marjorie Hannigan reached the last clause. She looked up at me before she read it. To my granddaughter, Sienna Morton, I leave the contents of this envelope, with my love. She slid a craft envelope across the table. It was torn at the upper corner. It was light. There was clearly only one object inside. My mother let out a breath I will not forget. She leaned toward my father and whispered 5 words I did not understand for another 3 weeks. He kept his promise. In the parking lot afterward, Holden clapped me on the shoulder hard enough to sting. Must be to a storage unit full of junk. Vanessa laughed. My mother told me, in her most patient voice, that I should be grateful I had gotten anything at all. My father unlocked the car without speaking. He moved like a man who was leaving a place faster than he had planned to. I sat in my Honda Civic for 7 minutes. I opened the envelope. The brass key fell into my hand. I turned it over. In pencil, in slanted handwriting, an address. I put it in the glove compartment. I drove home to Newton. I did not show it to anyone. For 3 weeks I did nothing about it. For 3 weeks my mother watched me like a woman waiting for a clock to chime. Then it was Christmas morning. I sat in the driveway of my parents' house in Newton for 30 minutes after my mother shoved the trash bag into my chest. The radio was playing Christmas carols I could not turn off because the dial was stuck. I did not start the engine. I just held the brass key in my left hand and the torn envelope in my right. I opened my banking app. $63.18 in checking. $940 in savings. The savings were earmarked for the security deposit on the apartment I had toured in November, but had not been able to sign because I was $1,200 short. The last paycheck had already gone, most of it to the U-Haul I had rented in October when the Brookline studio sold out from under me, the rest to the deposit I could not complete. I had nowhere to go. I typed the address from the back of the envelope into Google Maps. 1208 Belmont Avenue. Springfield, Massachusetts, 86 miles, 1 hour and 40 minutes via I-90 West. I had never heard of Ashbury Vault and Trust. I searched for it. There was almost nothing online. A single small website with 3 sentences. Private trust company. Founded 1957. Beneficiary access by appointment only. No phone number. No interior photos. I was not a beneficiary of anything I knew about, but I had 80 miles and no other plan. I started the car at 2:14 in the afternoon on Christmas Day. The highway was almost empty. People were inside their houses with their families. People were carving turkeys. People were watching football. I drove past exits I had taken on holidays I had once believed I belonged to. I drove through a snow flurry near Sturbridge that lasted only 10 minutes, and then stopped. I pulled off at the exit for Cracker Barrel because I needed coffee, and I did not want to arrive too soon. I was afraid of what would happen when I did. I was afraid of what would not. The waitress was a woman in her 60s named Bonnie. She refilled my coffee 3 times without asking. She brought me a slice of apple pie I had not ordered. I tried to pay. She waved her hand. "Pie's on the house tonight, hun. Merry Christmas." I sat in that booth for almost 2 hours. I held the brass key in my palm and turned it over and over. There was a small number stamped on the top edge. 312. I noticed for the first time in that booth that the key was older than I was. The brass had a kind of softness on the edges only time produces. The teeth were narrow and irregular in a way modern keys are not. My grandfather had been holding on to it for a long time. I drove the last 46 miles slowly. I exited I-90 at the interchange for downtown Springfield and made my way south into Forest Park, where the streets are lined with old maples and stone houses with iron fences. The map led me down Belmont Avenue, past 3 blocks of historic homes, until the houses thinned and a long stone wall began on the right side of the street. The wall ran for almost 500 feet, about 6 feet high. Granite, not concrete, the kind of wall that suggests the people behind it had built it before zoning laws existed. The iron gate came into view at 8:28 in the evening. A small bronze plaque was set into the stone next to it. I had to lean out the driver's window to read it. Ashbury Vault and Trust. Established 1957. By appointment only. There was no intercom. No buzzer for visitors. There was a small visitor parking area outside the gate. 4 spaces. All of them empty. I parked. I turned off the engine. I draped my work coat over my chest. I leaned back in the driver's seat and watched my breath fog the windshield. I did not knock. I did not call. I slept in my Honda Civic, holding a key I did not understand, in front of a gate I could not open. The temperature dropped to 26 degrees overnight. At 6:42 in the morning, there was a knock on the driver's side window. The knock was gentle. Twice. Not loud enough to startle me, but loud enough that I had been waiting for it without knowing. I rolled down the window. A man in his late 60s stood beside my car. He wore a navy wool overcoat with a small gold pin shaped like a pine tree. His hair was white. His face was pink from the cold. A name tag was clipped to his lapel. Henry Whitlock. Security. "Good morning, ma'am. May I see your key?" I held it up. He looked at the number stamped on the top. 312. He straightened. Not in a startled way, in a trained way. The way a doorman straightens when an expected guest arrives. "We've been expecting you, Miss Morton. Please follow me. The gate will open in a moment." I asked him how he knew my name. He smiled, a careful small smile. "Your grandfather left us a photograph and a copy of your driver's license 8 months ago, ma'am. We've been told to receive you as Ms. Morton at the gate and to defer all other questions to Mr. Hollis inside." The gate opened. I drove the Civic into a courtyard of cut stone, past a small fountain that had been drained for the season, and parked in a visitor lot where the lines were freshly painted under the snow. Henry walked beside the car. He did not rush me. The main building was 3 stories of gray stone with tall, narrow windows. A copper plaque next to the door read, "Ashbury Vault and Trust. Established 1957. Henry held the door open. Warm air. The smell of pine and wax. A small reception room with 2 leather chairs and a fire that had been lit. I would later learn, 20 minutes before I parked. A woman stood up to greet me. Charcoal skirt suit, rimless glasses. Perhaps 45? Her name was Margot Endicott. She was Mr. Hollis's assistant. She did not ask me how I was. She offered me coffee. She offered me a hot towel for my hands. She offered me nothing about why I was there. Margot led me up a flight of oak stairs to the 2nd floor. The hallway smelled like old paper. 3 doors. The last one stood open. A man rose behind a desk made from a single slab of walnut. Late 60s. Charcoal 3-piece suit. A vest with a gold watch chain looped through the buttonhole. He was not tall. He had the kind of bearing that does not require it. "Ms. Morton, my name is Edmund Hollis. Your grandfather and I have known each other since 2003. He came around the desk and offered his hand. I shook it. He nodded toward a chair upholstered in dark green leather. "Please, sit. Margot, please close the office and bring up the access log for box 312, the past 180 days. Margot closed the door behind her without a sound. She came back 4 minutes later carrying a folder bound in dark blue. Edmund Hollis sat down across from me. He laced his fingers together. He did not open the folder yet. "Ms. Morton, before I show you anything, I need to tell you 3 things. None of them will sound real until I show you the documents that accompany them. So, I will say them slowly." He raised his right index finger. "First, you are the sole beneficiary of a trust your grandfather established here in June of 2023. It is irrevocable. The principal as of last business day is $1,892,000. It cannot be contested by anyone in your family. Your grandfather knew what he was doing. He sat through 3 separate capacity evaluations with 2 physicians to make certain of it. A second finger. Second. In the past 10 weeks, this company has logged 3 attempts to access your safe deposit box and trust documents. All 3 were denied. All 3 were recorded. 2 of them came from a person who attempted to use the credentials of your grandfather after his death. The third, and this is why we asked Henry to take particular care with you this morning, was a forged signature card. A third finger. Third, your grandfather left a recording for you, sealed inside box 312 with one instruction. It is to be played only when you arrive in person, alone, with the key. We have not heard it. He prepared it himself in August of last year. I do not know what is in it. He folded his hands again. I did not speak. I waited. Or, if you prefer the way your grandfather registered your interior file with us, he said quietly, as Ms. Beaumont. He used your mother's maiden name. He said you would understand why one day. I do not know whether you do. I did not. Not yet. He opened the folder. He turned it so I could read it. The access log was 3 lines long. Line 1. Vanessa M. Morton. October 14th, 2025. Box 312. Denied. Signature mismatch. Fraud alert filed with state. Line 2. Adelaide M. Morton. November 18th, 2025. Trust documents. Denied. Not authorized. Filed. Line 3. Adelaide M. Morton. November 25th, 2025. Trust documents. Denied. Repeat attempt. Filed. I read it twice. I read it 3 times. My sister had walked into this building 6 weeks before Christmas with a forged version of my signature in her hand. She had not been crying on Christmas morning. She had been waiting to see if I would come back from this address. Edmund Hollis stood. He took a brass key from a small drawer in his desk and held it up next to the one in my palm. Ms. Morton, let's open box 312. Edmund led me down 2 flights of stairs. The lower level was carved out of bedrock. The vault door was made by Mosler, 18 inches thick, with a brass dial on the front and a chrome lever as long as my forearm. Edmund turned the dial through 3 numbers I did not see. The lever clicked. The door swung open without a sound. Inside was a room about the size of a large kitchen. Rows of safe deposit boxes from floor to ceiling, 3 sizes, brass faceplates, etched numbers. Box 312 was at chest height in the 3rd row. Edmund inserted a master key in the left lock. I inserted my brass key in the right lock. We turned together. The drawer slid out smooth. Heavy. Inside were 3 things. A leather folder, deep brown, with the initials TB stamped in gold on the front. A bundle of envelopes tied with a piece of natural twine. A black velvet pouch about the size of a deck of cards, with the shape of a USB drive inside it. Edmund carried the drawer to a private reading room next to the vault. The room had 1 table, 2 chairs, a green-shaded lamp, and a door with a frosted glass panel. He set the drawer down. He stood at the door. Ms. Morton, take as long as you need. When you would like me to come in, knock on the glass. He closed the door behind him. I sat down and opened the leather folder. The first document was a single page. The title at the top, in my grandfather's neat hand, read, Beaumont Education Custodial Account, Disbursement Summary, September 2016 to August 2023. Below the title was a table, 6 columns, 1 for each academic year. Then, in the last column, 2 more years. The total amount disbursed from my grandfather's investment accounts to my mother as the listed custodian, and later as the designated recipient of his annual gift letters, came out to $580,000. Below that, in a different ink, was a second number. Amount applied to Boston College tuition and fees as confirmed by the Office of Student Accounts, $74,000. Below that, A third number, circled twice. Difference: $506,000. $506,000. I read the page 3 times. The paper was Crane stationery, the kind my grandfather had used for everything. The numbers were written in dark blue Waterman ink that I had grown up watching him refill from a glass bottle on the kitchen table. The circles around the bottom number were each drawn 3 times. The third time pressed harder. He had been angry the third time. I turned the page. The second document was titled Repayment Acknowledgement and Restitution Agreement. It was dated April 11th, 2022. It was notarized by a woman named Eleanor Voss, Commission Number 84-2206-B, Hampshire County. It was signed by 2 people, Wendell J. Morton, Adelaide B. Morton. The text on the page admitted, in plain language, that they had received funds from the Beaumont Education Custodial Account and from subsequent annual gifts intended for me, and had applied portions of those funds to expenses other than my educational support. They acknowledged the total. They agreed to remit restitution within 36 months from the date of signing. At the bottom of the page in my grandfather's hand was a single line in the same dark blue ink. Restitution paid to date, $0. As of November 1st, 2025. He had updated the line 8 days before he died. The bundle of envelopes contained 6 years of bank statements he had subpoenaed and a 5-page letter folded into the envelope on top. I unfolded the letter, the Crane paper, the dark blue ink, the slant. I will not read you the whole letter. I read it twice in that vault. I have read it 11 times since. The line I want you to hear is this one. Sienna, I waited because I wanted you to choose your own life, your major, your job, your friends, before I gave you proof of what they took. I did not want my money to be the reason you trusted me. I wanted you to choose me. You have. So now I can give you what was always yours. Don't measure your worth by what they took. Measure it by what I refused to let them take. I sat in that reading room for a long time before I opened the velvet pouch. The USB drive was unmarked except for a single piece of label tape with a date in my grandfather's hand. For Sienna, 8/12/25. I knocked on the glass. Edmund came in. He had brought a laptop and a pair of headphones. He did not ask me if I was ready. He set up the equipment. He stepped back to give me space. I plugged in the USB, one file, 14 minutes and 22 seconds. I put on the headphones. I pressed play. My grandfather's voice was thinner than I had heard it. He had recorded the file 3 months before he died. Sienna, if you are hearing this, sit down. Take a breath. Listen all the way through before you decide anything. I want you to understand something I should have told you the day you started college. You were never the burden in that house. You were the bank. He paused. He coughed. He continued. Everything they built, the wedding, the boat, the second mortgage that was not supposed to exist, they built on money I sent for you. They built it on stolen tuition. I let them do it for one reason. I needed evidence, and I needed you to grow up free of it. Now both are done. The rest is yours. I took the headphones off slowly. Edmund waited at the door without looking at me. He gave me 3 minutes. I needed all 3. When I knocked on the glass to ask him to come in, he opened the door, sat down across from me, and said only one thing. Would you like me to call your lawyer for you, Ms. Morton? Or would you prefer a few minutes alone first? Alone first. Then call her. That afternoon, while I sat in a guest house on the Ashbury property that I did not yet know my grandfather had asked them to make ready for me, my mother left her first voicemail at 4:38 in the afternoon. There would be 77 more before the end of the week. By midnight on the 26th, my mother had called me 78 times. My father had called 14. Vanessa had called 6. Holden had called once. I did not answer any of them. I let each one go to voicemail. I sat in the guest house and saved every message to a separate drive Margot had given me, labeled by date and time. Edmund had told me to keep them. Edmund had not said why yet. The voicemails started polite. They escalated. "Honey, where are you? We are worried sick. Please call us back. Sienna, you need to come home. We can talk about whatever you think happened. You are being manipulated by that company. They are not your family. If you do not come home by tomorrow, we will have to call the police." That was the first night. By the second night, my mother had a different tone. She started using my middle name, Sienna Ann. She started using my grandfather's name. She started saying he had not been himself in the last few months, that he had signed documents he did not understand, that she had warned him about people taking advantage of him. I do not need to tell you what that line was setting up. You know. On the morning of the 28th, my mother drove herself to Springfield. She brought Father Anthony Russo with her, the priest at St. Cecilia in Newton, where she had taught Sunday school for 18 years. She told him a story I have not been able to verify in full. She told him I was in some kind of mental crisis. She told him I had been taken in by a financial institution. She told him a 62-year-old man in a vest had locked her daughter inside a vault. Henry Whitlock stopped her at the gate. He did not raise his voice. He told her politely that no one was being held inside the building, that I was free to leave at any moment, and that I had not chosen to. He called Edmund. Edmund came down. Edmund took the meeting in a small reception room outside the main building, not inside it, so that nothing my mother said could later be claimed to be confidential. He told her, before the meeting started, that Margot would be taking notes. He set Margot's notepad on the table. He gestured to the second chair. My mother sat down. By sitting down, she accepted that the notes would be kept. Margot still has the notes. I have seen them. My mother said her father had been confused. Father Russo nodded gently. My mother said her daughter had been distressed since the funeral. Father Russo nodded. My mother said she was here to bring me home. Edmund said, "Mrs. Morton, your daughter is a beneficiary of a private trust. She is free to leave at any moment. She has not chosen to." My mother said, "I would like to speak with her." Edmund said, "I will ask her. I cannot promise anything." I said no. When my mother left, Father Russo lingered at the gate. He spoke quietly to Edmund. He asked if he could see me himself, just the two of us, without my mother present. Edmund relayed the request. I said yes. I met Father Russo the next morning in the small chapel on the Ashbury property. A private chapel my grandfather had told me about once. The way he told me about a lot of things I did not understand at the time. I showed Father Russo the repayment acknowledgement. I let him hold it. I let him read it. He gave it back to me. He looked at it for a long moment before he spoke. "Sienna, I have known your mother for 30 years. There are some pieces of paper I cannot unread." He left without telling her anything I had shown him. A week later, on the 7th of January, my mother filed a complaint with Adult Protective Services. She claimed I was a victim of financial exploitation by Ashbury Vault and Trust. The intake officer at the Springfield APS office was a woman named Diane Pomeroy. She had been doing this job for 21 years. I went in and met her on the 8th. I brought the trust documents, the audio recording, and the repayment acknowledgement. Diane Pomeroy listened. She read the first page of every document. She looked at the audio file's timestamps. She closed the folder. "Ms. Morton, you are 27. You are employed. You have no disability that would bring you within our jurisdiction. I am declining to open this case. I am noting in the file that the original reporter appears to have filed in retaliation. That is not how APS is meant to be used. I am sorry for what your mother has put you through." She walked me to the door of her office. She handed me a slip of paper with 3 names written on it. "Get a lawyer, soon. These 3 are good. I would start with the one on top." The top name was Eileen Ravensdale, of Ravensdale and Brookhart, LLP, Boston. That night, my sister called me. It was 10:14 in the evening, the 15th of January. Her voice was thick. She had been crying. They made me do it. Mom told me where the key was supposed to be. She told me you were dangerous. She said if I didn't get into the box, you would take everything. I let her talk for 6 minutes. When she was done, I said, "Vanessa, are you saying that our mother directed you to forge my signature?" She said yes. "Then put that in writing, to my lawyer. Good night." I hung up. 3 minutes later, my phone buzzed. A text message. "Mom told me where the key was supposed to be. She said you were dangerous. I didn't think it would go this far. I am sorry, Sienna." I screenshotted it. I forwarded it to the email address Diane Pomeroy had given me. The next morning, I had a meeting with Eileen Ravensdale. "I want to ask you something before we go further. Have you ever sat in a car with no money and a piece of paper that didn't make sense yet? If you have, tell me about it in the comments. You're not the only one. I read every single one." Eileen Ravensdale's office was on the 12th floor of One International Place in Boston. Floor-to-ceiling windows that looked out across the harbor. A receptionist who offered me water and tea with the same calm efficiency Margot had at Ashbury. A waiting room with a Wassily chair and a stack of recent magazines. Eileen Ravensdale herself was 51. She wore a navy suit. She did not smile when she shook my hand. She showed me into her office, took my folder of documents, and read in silence for 38 minutes without raising her head once. When she finished, she capped her pen and set it down at a precise angle next to the folder. "Ms. Morton, I want to be honest with you. This case is not difficult to win. It is difficult to win cleanly. We will win it cleanly. Sign here." The engagement letter was 14 pages. The retainer was $15,000, which Edmund had already arranged a distribution to cover. I signed it. Eileen made a phone call before I had left the building. She had called a forensic accountant named Roland Ainsworth. For the next 3 weeks, Roland subpoenaed bank records. Massachusetts allows civil subpoenas during pre-suit investigation under certain conditions, and Eileen used them all. He pulled my parents' joint checking, joint savings, 2 credit cards, and the business account for Morton Auto Repair. He pulled my mother's parish treasurer accounts at St. Cecilia because she had used that role as a deposit account for some of the wire transfers from my grandfather. Roland built a single spreadsheet that traced every dollar that had been wired into my mother's accounts and where it had gone within 48 hours of arrival. I will not bore you with the full breakdown. $80,000 to Vanessa's wedding in 2022, the cake, the dress, the deposit on the venue, $36,500 to a pearl white Audi Q3, purchased 2 months after Vanessa's 17th birthday. $112,000 to a second mortgage down payment on the Newton home, a payment that had been made the year my mother told me she could not even cover my dorm housing. $186,000 in hard money loans to Morton Auto Repair to keep my father's business open after he lost a large fleet contract in 2021. $107,000 in personal cash withdrawals, almost all of them from ATMs at 2 casinos near the Connecticut border, none of them deposited back. My father had a gambling problem. I had not known. Roland Ainsworth wrote in his report, "Funds were commingled within 48 hours of receipt. This is not poor bookkeeping. This is structured." The total amount of funds that had been disbursed for my benefit and then redirected for the personal use of my parents was $506,000. Eileen calculated the Massachusetts statutory interest at 12% per annum from the date of the repayment acknowledgement, April 11th, 2022, forward to the projected hearing date. She added attorney fees. The total demand came to approximately $750,000 in principal and interest, plus an estimated $94,000 in legal fees and costs. She filed the complaint at the Middlesex County Superior Court in Woburn on the 9th of February, 2026. 4 counts. Conversion, a legal word for taking someone else's money and treating it as your own. Breach of fiduciary duty, because my mother had been the listed custodian. Breach of contract, because of the 2022 acknowledgement they had signed. Civil conspiracy, because they had worked together. Case number MICV 202600892. On the 12th of February, Vanessa signed a sworn affidavit at Eileen's office. In it, she admitted under penalty of perjury that on the 14th of October, 2025, at the direction of our mother Adelaide M. Morton, she had attempted to access Safe Deposit Box 312 at Ashbury Vault and Trust using a signature card she had reproduced without authorization. The Springfield Police Department had already opened the forgery investigation when Ashbury filed the fraud report in October. Vanessa's affidavit gave the Hampshire County District Attorney enough to offer a cooperator plea. That same week, my sister's ex-husband Cameron Pruitt filed an emergency motion to modify custody in Hampshire County Probate Court. The motion was based on the pending criminal charge. By the 14th of February, Logan was sleeping at his father's apartment in Amherst, with my sister granted only supervised visitation pending the outcome. On Valentine's Day, a process server named Cyrus Halloway walked into Morton Auto Repair at 11:18 in the morning. My father was working on a Toyota. Cyrus said, "Wendell J. Morton, you have been served." My father looked up. He did not say anything. He did not call my mother for 2 hours. He just sat in the back office of his own shop holding a stack of papers he could not put down. My mother was served at the house 30 minutes later by a different process server. The next 48 hours produced 78 more voicemails. I did not listen to any of them. Eileen had instructed me to forward everything to her office unopened. On the 16th of February, at 2:14 in the morning, my mother left her last voicemail, the last one I ever heard from her in real time. "Sienna, please, we can fix this. Just call me. We're still your family." I forwarded it to Eileen. I went back to sleep. 2 days later, I drove to my mother's parish for Ash Wednesday Mass at St. Cecilia. I did not tell her I was coming. I sat in the third pew on the right side, where Father Russo had asked me to sit when I told him I would be there. I had a brown envelope in my coat. I did not open it for the entire Mass. She had not seen me sit yet. Ash Wednesday at St. Cecilia begins at 6:30 in the evening. The first reading was from the prophet Joel. "Return to me with your whole heart, with fasting and weeping and mourning. Rend your hearts, not your garments." I had not heard those words since I was a child. They landed differently at 27. My mother walked up the center aisle to receive ashes. She did not see me until she turned to walk back to her pew. She faltered. She kept walking. She did not look at me again. After the Mass, the parish moved to the basement hall for the small social Father Russo had quietly told me about. Coffee, sandwiches, the smell of an industrial coffee maker that has been running for an hour. About 50 people. The kind of evening where everyone knew everyone, and one new face changed the temperature. My mother had brought 35 printed copies of a letter she had written and titled "A Mother's Plea," on the misuse of my father's memory. She did not go to the microphone. She had planned to, but the moment Father Russo saw her place the stack on the side table, he placed his hand quietly on the microphone and shook his head once. My mother nodded. She did not push it. Instead, she carried the stack with her and walked from one small group to the next. Husband, wife, Sunday school parents, choir members, Knights of Columbus. She handed each person a letter. She lowered her voice. She said the same line every time. I think it was rehearsed in front of a mirror. "I am only asking you to pray for her. To pray for her return to reason and to our home." I watched from the far end of the room. I had not yet moved. She approached the group that included Howard Bellingham, the parish treasurer for 40 years. Howard was a slow, careful man with a white mustache and a habit of folding his hands behind his back when he listened. My mother handed him a letter. She started her line. I stepped forward then. I had timed it carefully. I did not raise my voice. I had not raised it once in 14 months. I did not raise it then. Father Russo, Mr. Bellingham. May I have a moment? The room did not go silent. Not exactly. People kept eating their sandwiches, but the small group of 4 near Howard Bellingham did go still. I handed Father Russo the envelope I had carried in my coat. He opened it. He did not read it. He passed it to Howard. Howard read the first page. He stopped. I spoke in a normal voice. I did not need to project. Most of the room could not hear me. The people in front of me could. Father Russo, Mr. Bellingham, what I have just handed you is a notarized agreement dated the 11th of April, 2022. Signed by both of my parents. In it, they acknowledge having taken $506,000 from a fund my grandfather established for my college education. They agreed to repay it within 36 months. They have not paid a single dollar. The notary is a woman named Eleanor Voss in Hampshire County, and she is reachable by phone. I paused. I let the people in front of me read the next sentence I needed them to hear. I am not asking the parish to take a side. I am only asking my mother to stop using this church to take one for her. My mother had stopped moving. She still had the stack of printed letters in her left hand. Her voice came out small. She did not mean it for me. She did not mean it for anyone in particular. It wasn't supposed to be like this. That was the line I had been waiting for. The line every person I had ever loved in that family had been protecting themselves from for 9 months. The line that admitted, in front of 40 witnesses, what no court would even need to prove. My father turned. He walked to the side door of the parish hall. He pushed it open. He did not come back. My mother stayed in the middle of the room with the stack of papers in her hand. Howard Bellingham was already on his phone. He was calling Eleanor Voss to verify the notary commission number. He did this within the first 90 seconds. He is the kind of man who verifies a thing in front of you because he does not want you to think he doubts you. He confirmed the number out loud. He looked up at my mother. He said 3 words. Adelaide, sit down. She sat down on one of the folding chairs. She put her head in her hands. Father Russo took the stack of printed letters out of her left hand without resistance. He set them on the side table. He turned to the room. Everyone, I am going to ask you to head home tonight. This gathering is concluded. People left in 2s and 3s. They left quietly. They left with the same care you take when leaving a hospital room. Howard Bellingham stayed with my mother until her brother arrived to drive her home. I do not know what they said to each other. I do not need to know. I drove back to the guest house at Ashbury that night. My hands were steady on the wheel. For the first time since November, I slept all the way through to morning. My parents' lawyer called Eileen Ravensdale 4 days after Ash Wednesday. He had read everything she had filed. He had seen the affidavit my sister had signed. He had seen the audit. He had seen the audio recording transcript. He had only one question. How do we resolve this without discovery? Discovery, in the simplest terms, means the part of a lawsuit where both sides have to turn over every document, every email, every text message, every bank record. My parents' lawyer had read the case file. He understood that discovery would expose more than my mother's misuse of the church treasurer accounts. It would expose my father's gambling debt at Mohegan Sun. It would expose my mother's 3 separate attempts to access the trust documents after my grandfather's death. Eileen Ravensdale answered him in 3 sentences. A consent judgment, full restitution plus statutory interest plus attorney fees. Signed by both of your clients in front of a judge, no appeal, On the 22nd of April, 2026, in a courtroom at the Middlesex County Superior Court in Woburn, my parents signed a consent judgment in front of the Honorable Penelope Crestwood. Restitution principal: $506,000. Statutory interest at 12% from April 11th, 2022. $244,000. Attorney fees and costs: $94,000. Total: $844,000. My parents put the Newton house on the market the same week. They sold it within 19 days, well below ask, to a developer who was already bidding on neighboring lots. My father closed Morton Auto Repair the following month and put the commercial property up for sale. Between the two sales and my mother's probate residue from my grandfather's estate, they were able to pay the judgment in full by the second week of May. Vanessa accepted a plea deal from the Hampshire County District Attorney on the 5th of May. 2 felony counts reduced to 1, 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, no incarceration, as long as she completed every condition. Cameron Pruitt was awarded sole physical custody of Logan for 18 months, with my sister granted supervised visitation only. St. Cecilia's Parish Council voted unanimously on the third Tuesday in April to remove my mother as parish treasurer, as Sunday school director, and as a Eucharistic minister. Father Russo did not call her to deliver the news. Howard Bellingham did. Holden called me 3 weeks after the consent judgment. He asked me to meet him for coffee. I agreed to a single meeting at a Tata Bakery in Cambridge. He spoke for 22 minutes. He explained in 5 different ways why he had not known about the embezzlement. He said he had been busy with his own marketing job. He said he had thought our parents were stretched, but he had not asked. He said he had not believed our mother would lie to me about money. He said he would not have laughed in the parking lot if he had known. I listened. When he was done, I paid for my own coffee. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair. You laughed at me in a parking lot, Holden. You did not have to know. You only had to ask. I walked out. I did not see my brother again that year. At the end of April, 2 days before my parents sold the Newton house, I logged into my SoFi account and my Navient account. I wired $92,000 from a distribution Edmund had arranged that morning. I refreshed both screens. Each one read the same thing: balance 0. For the first time since I was 18 years old, I did not owe anyone anything. I printed the screenshot. I put it in the folder where I kept the letter from my grandfather. The folder was almost full now. In late May, I moved. The house I bought is not big. It is a 2-bedroom on Pleasant Street in East Hampton, half a mile from the corner where the first Beaumont Pharmacy stood for 44 years. The porch is small. The maple in the front yard is older than I am. The kitchen looks east. I still work at Brigham and Women's. The commute is an hour and a half each way. I do not mind it. The driving gives me time to think. I have a lot to think about now. I closed on the house the 3rd week of May. On the morning of Memorial Day, I planted 12 yellow tulip bulbs along the walkway from the sidewalk to the front door. I did not say anything as I dug. I just dug. When I was finished, I stood and looked at the line of small mounds I had pressed back into the soil. A neighbor walked past on the sidewalk. She stopped. "Beautiful flowers, sweetheart."